Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me on the BioBreakthroughs podcast. I'm your host, Jared Taylor. Joining me today, we have a very special guest. We have the CEO of SK Pharmteco, Joerg, I'm going to try this, Ahlgrimm. Did I say it? Kind of, sort of,
Almost,
almost as
almost
good in
perfect,
this.
Jared.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Well, I'm excited to chat with you here today. Let's
Same
dive
here.
right in. Let's assume, I doubt this, but let's assume we run into someone that hasn't heard of you. What do you tell them? Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so German national joined the pharmaceutical industry, many years ago, back in Germany after studying industrial engineering. First company was Sharing AG, was working on a small molecules at a time, moving into Baxter International, changed countries at a time, moved from Germany to Austria, moved to the United States for Baxter, spent there 15 years, was part of a very interesting split of the company, later an acquisition by Shire of that split, left at the time, moved to Switzerland, joined Lonza, and became the head of Lonza's operations team globally for 4 years in Basel, and then joined the Center for Breakthrough Medicines in Philadelphia, a startup for cell and gene, to basically put that little check mark on my bucket list. That one was actually later invested by SK, or invested into by SK. SK asked me to become the CEO of SK Pharmteco. We acquired majority of the Center for Breakthrough Medicine. So right now I'm integrating my old company into my new company, and that's how we got together, Jared.
That's something a lot of people don't get to say, that they're working on integrating their old company into their new company. So that's a unique position you're in, but
Yes.
one that's really interesting. Actually, I would love to talk about that. So why integrate the two? Like, how did this first come about that you wanted to combine?
Yeah, so very simple. I mean, two really different streams, right? I mean, SK started in the 90s to build a CDMO business, pharmaceutical CDMO business. Over time, added acquisitions to it. A plant was purchased in Ireland from BMS. They purchased Impact Fine Chemicals and decided in 2020-21 to invest into cell and gene therapy. First investment was to buy a majority of a company in Paris called Iposkesi. Second was a minority investment into the Center for Breakthrough Medicines. Now, in parallel, I joined the Center for Breakthrough Medicines at the early days in 2020 as the founding CEO. We built up that company, went for fundraising or for financing, and found SK. So first investment, as I said, minority investment. The CEO of SK Pharmteco at the time decided to retire in 2022. There was always a plan to take majority in CBM. So SK asked me in anticipation of that to step up and take over leadership for SK Pharmteco, which I did. It then took a little longer than expected to actually get to this majority. So it took roughly a year. So end of 23, we finally got to the majority. And that's how I got now into the situation to integrate my old company into my new company.
You've been at SK now for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
What early challenges did you face when you were first taking on the role? I'm sure there was still a lot to learn and a lot to dive into. And then how did you get past those early challenges?
Yeah, so I would say I would like to mention two. I mean, clearly, being a CDMO, we face similar challenges than every other CDMO who was very successful during COVID, right? I mean, I came basically in at the end of COVID, and clearly, what we have seen rather quickly is a decline in demand, and we had to reorient ourselves, find new areas of growth, and that was clearly a short-term challenge which had to be overcome in line with the majority of the industry. I would say the second challenge I like to mention is that until I joined, the main philosophy was to actually keep the acquisitions more or less as they are. There was not a lot of integration. So I basically dealt with four different companies, which for a while acted under the umbrella of SK Pharmteco. We added CBM to this as a fifth one. And there wasn't really much around one culture, one brand, one approach to customer satisfaction, one approach to getting employees engaged. And we have now over the last year and a half with the leadership team worked on basically that integration and bringing everybody together under one umbrella and building one of a very exciting place to work, but also a very important contributor to the overall CDMO industry.
And now in your role, you wear many hats, right? And I interview a lot of leaders across the space, and one of the things I really want to dive into is I know you can't like everything about what you do, but what are the parts of your job that you like the most that really excite you out of these many hats that you have to wear?
Well, a couple of examples. I would say the most important thing, which for me is rewarding me on a daily basis, is to see how my team excels. So I believe that a key role, any leader has is to make sure that you create an environment where your team members can bring their best, where they get challenges, where they solve problems, and where they have the freedom to occasionally also make a mistake or an error, and then hopefully not do it again. But I think that's very exciting. So seeing how the team excels and how the team grows and how the team also is able to manage conflict. You don't want a leadership team which all say kumbaya permanently, because then you are not creating significant change. You want a certain level of conflict, but you also want to create an environment where the team feels safe to actually solve the conflict. And the other one I'm always excited about is, especially in our field, we are working on therapies. If they actually at some point come to the patient, which we all hope for, they will be game changing. And I think it's very rewarding on a daily basis to see some of those therapies advancing, speak with those respective customers, understand how they think about this, but also gather the opportunity which is out there for patients. So I hope, that's always a lot of, thought I put into this one. How can we do this faster? I want to bring more to the table as a CDMO than just executing what the clients want us to execute. That's very important, but given the potential which is out there, the team is continuously thinking about how can we help our clients to get these great therapies faster to the patients. And I think that's another one which excites me on a daily basis.
You have an extensive background with global operations. Can you talk me through some of the unique challenges faced when you're trying to ensure seamless production and supply of advanced therapies across different regions?
Yeah. I give you also here a couple of examples. So clearly, one thing we always had to master back in my days in Baxter in a pretty complex environment is the network consisted a lot out of plasma fractionation. So we had a whole bunch of plasma collection centers, fractionation facilities, and for the most part, the products we produced, especially IVIG, were very often heavily supply constrained. So there were times where we had to go to Congress, where we had to stand in front of the EMEA and in front of the FDA and kind of defend, if you will, the fact that we are doing the best we can in order to supply the product to the patients. But at that time, I learned what it means to actually excite a whole operations team to go above and beyond and truly make sure that every potential patient out there can get product. So that's clearly one example. I think the other one is significant change, in terms of integrating acquisitions. So when I joined Lonza, I was responsible for 12 facilities. When I left Lonza, I was responsible for 37 facilities. Within 4 years, we integrated basically a tripling of the network. Onesie, twosie acquisitions, but also larger ones like Capsugel. So this was clearly very, very challenging and exciting to bring them all together under one umbrella, put the same OE culture on top, and make them all march, if you will, in the same direction. So very exciting and very challenging. And everything I learned in the years before was needed in order to, help the team on that path. I like to say when it comes to Center for Breakthrough Medicine, after running these significantly large operations team in Baxter or Lonza, building something completely from scratch where absolutely nothing was there other than a conceptual idea was another significant challenge, which frankly, everything I learned before was helpful, but it may not have even given you all the time the right answer. So that experience of building something completely from scratch after you were basically running some of the largest, most complex networks out there was, from a pure leadership point of view, a fantastic experience for me.
You've mentioned earlier on, I want to go back to this, a patient-centric culture and approach, right? Can you share any specific instance where this philosophy made a big impact on a particular project or partnership?
Well, look, I think clearly right now, what we are doing, is financing right now, or funding is right now something difficult in the biotech industry. So we are working right now very closely with some of our partners where we know the science works, where we know they will soon hopefully close their financing and actually continue to advance their program in anticipation of risk. I also can tell you a completely different example. We had one day here in the site, in one of our sites, a patient for Friedreich's ataxia. I've never seen an auditorium of 200 people being in tears. And I think the emotion which this patient created, and telling his story, and how he is actually managing life with a debilitating disease, was so inspiring to the team that for months afterwards, everybody was talking about this event. So it really has to be more than just talk. You actually have to put action against this. So we are very proud that we are, working on medicines in that space, and clearly getting a patient in front of the team is super exciting.
Let me ask you a question. If because we hear this a lot, right? That funding is difficult in the biotech space right now. So what is your advice for people? Like, what do you do in that situation? Because you can't just stop. Like, how do you address that when? Because we go through cycles like this, right? This is not a new thing where okay, it's maybe more difficult to get financing. How do you address that as a leader?
Well, look, I mean, when it comes to how do we address this in our own company, I mean, clearly there is an element of ensuring that we from an operational efficiency point of view, streamline our organization to cope with the respective demand changes. These are sometimes difficult decisions, but they are necessary in order to ensure that you maneuver those, call it waves, right? I think from it comes to being a biotech innovator company, if you like it or not, I do believe that the last 3 years, in some form, may actually help cell and gene therapies over the next years, because all companies had to focus on their most promising projects. A lot of less promising ones were put to the sideline. So that's difficult overall. That's difficult for the CDMOs, that's difficult for those companies. But we created now an environment where the likelihood of success of the projects which are being advanced is very, very high, because the brightest minds of the industry did portfolio reprioritizations and focused on the one or two they deemed to be most likely to succeed from a clinical point of view, but also from a CMC point of view. So when I look into the future, my expectation is that we are seeing an increase in clinical success rate. We are seeing an further increase in approvals, while overall we may see less programs being advanced. But long term or mid term, I believe that effect lifts up the whole industry. So if you will, good and bad news to some extent. And for me, the future in that space is bright. We also see right now on the small molecule side significant advancements of new, very, very exciting approaches and very innovative drugs with a super high efficacy for the respective therapeutic areas.
Now, where do you see SK going? I know there's a lot that you want to accomplish, but let's say over the next 5 years, you don't have to give us everything, but what are some of the strategic goals that you have set that you really want to work towards?
Yeah. So what I would like to achieve is that we as a company, when somebody talks about the good CDMOs in 2028, so in 5 years from now, 4 or 5 years from now, SK Pharmteco has to be in that discussion. If we achieve this on all levels and with all the external manufacturing, organizations which are out there and create that reputation, we have achieved one strategic goal, number one. Number two, we are coming from a very strong background of being a small molecule API manufacturing company, which now starts to go into cell and gene. We are investing into multiple other modalities. And I want, our goal as in 5 years is to make sure that we are recognized as a multimodality provider, supplying products across different portfolios of our respective customers, and be recognized as a reliable source and a reliable partner across all of these modalities. Last, but by far not least, is we want to be known as a company where people come, have fun, can live their dreams, and can develop to their fullest. If we create an environment like this and an employer reputation along that line, I think we have achieved the third goal, which I would highlight those three probably as the most important goals.
I love it, and look forward to chatting with you along that way to kind of hear how things are going. I would love, as we wrap up here, to hear some advice you have for kind of the next generation of leaders in this space, right? Because let's say there's someone just entering the space now, they're starting to see that the financing is difficult and things like that, and they're going to go through cycles, right? But what advice would you have for them? This could be at SK or even at other organizations, but I mean, let's go through your lens of someone new enters the space at SK. What advice would you give them?
Learn, learn, learn. One of the advantages I believe I had in my career is my first job was basically to be the project manager reporting to a plant manager. He gave me projects in every function of the plant. So in my first 2 years, I got to know how every function in a pharmaceutical manufacturing environment ticks and ties. And I think that knowledge helped me since then. The other thing, be open for location change. I think you will have a hard time to, make a exciting career staying in one company as possible, but staying in one company and one location is difficult. So the location changes I was open to also helped me a lot in advancing the career. And I think that's something very important. Also, from rounding up your personal leadership profile, being exposed to multiple cultures is very, very important, because at the end of the day, all tick and tie somewhat similar, but the nuances are so important to understand that I believe exposure to these different cultures is very, very important. So those would probably be, a few things which I would recommend everyone. Learn as much as you can about everything which impacts you in the exact role you are in, but then also be open for location changes to, basically be eligible for, promotions and advancements of your career. And focus on the patient. Everything else will follow. We are the pharmaceutical industry. Our vision and mission for everyone is to bring life-saving therapies to patients and cure some of the devastating, deadly diseases in this world. So it can't get better from that point of view. Keep that always in mind, and then everything else will follow that strong vision and mission.
Well, Jorg, I really appreciate hearing that advice. And I know a lot of people, because we have a mixture of people that are both starting their careers, are leading these organizations like yourself, investors, right? So those new people really appreciate when they get to hear advice from someone like yourself. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I look forward to staying in touch, and I hope to run into you at some of these events over the next couple months. But wishing you all the best of luck, and let's stay in touch.
Thanks for having me, Jared. Take care.